Hey guys, it's Gregor, and in this video I'm going to be talking about warships from Spain and how they might be implemented in World of Warships. I may have covered the more well-known factions that we know are coming to the game, but the world of naval warfare is quite vast after all, and there's much more to explore. So this time I thought I'd take a look at a more obscure faction when it comes to this kind of thing. Can Spain make a full tech tree? Maybe. It would certainly have to consist of several project vessels, but it could happen. The thing about the Spanish Navy during the first portion of the 20th century is that their military ventures were for the most part quite limited. And Spain remained removed from the First World War and underwent a very bloody civil war that resulted in rapid and dramatic changes in how its military was managed right before the Second World War. Still, there were a number of warships that participated in the Spanish Civil War, so therein lies a good place to start, and I'm going to be talking about ships that served in the war exclusively in this video. Other things to note include that Spanish ship design at large reflected that of the British, with many classes being built as variants to ships that were found in the Royal Navy. To keep things simple though, this video isn't going to be a proposal for a tech tree in full, just a general overview of various ship classes and how they'd probably fit in the game meta. Alright, so let's start with cruisers, of which there are two that we'll talk about in this video. Here's the CANARIAS class heavy cruiser, designed in the UK as a modified version of the County class, then built in Spain by a subsidiary of Vickers Armstrong. So, CANARIAS, the lead ship of two, was the flagship of the Nationalist Navy and had a very active career. It sunk 34 different Republican ships, and it helped search for survivors of the Bismarck during World War II. CANARIAS was a heavy cruiser, so she was equipped with 203mm guns, 8 of them total mounted in 4 twin turrets, 2 of them front, 2 of them back. Some more noticeable aspects about this ship's armament, though, are some fairly high-caliber secondary guns and a plethora of anti-aircraft guns. So to count them all off, 8 119mm guns made up the secondaries, and her AA suite consisted of 12 40mm and 3 20mm. Armor isn't too shabby either, with a 50mm belt and a 102mm box around the magazine. Deck armor is a bit lacking though for comparable cruisers at ranging from 25 to 35mm. Maneuvering is respectable with a top speed of 33 knots. She was planned to be equipped with torpedo tubes, though this never happened anyway, so I doubt that they'd be implemented in-game. CANARIAS looks like a respectable ship to me. I'd wager she'd lie somewhere between tiers 5 and 7. She'd function as a great escort ship, and her high-caliber main and secondary batteries would make her capable of brawling with like-tiered cruisers up close rather well, in part to her healthy amount of Citadel armor. On the Republican side of the war was Libertad, one of 3 Almirante CERVERA class light cruisers. The lead ship of this class served with the Nationalist Navy, but Libertad was the flagship of the Republicans and was involved in most of the war's most noteworthy naval conflicts. So these ships were heavily based off of the British Emerald class of ships, with design guidance by Sir Philip Watts himself, the father of the Dreadnought, and these ships were armed with 8 152mm guns in 3 twin turrets and 2 single mountings. The twin turrets in the front and the 3 single mounts placed towards the back, as well as 4 102mm secondary guns. Other weapons included 3 47mm guns that I'm assuming were used for shooting at aircraft, and 12 triple-tubed torpedo launchers, though I can't confirm if these tubes were fixed or not. And if they are fixed, then I doubt they would be implemented in-game. Armor is nothing special, and would be penned by just about everything it encountered, so it's not really worth mentioning. Maneuvering-wise, it could reach 33 knots in a straight line, though. This class of cruisers seems like a pretty typical type of light cruiser, probably fitting at either Tier 4 or Tier 5. I suppose some people wouldn't mind playing them, but since Spain's prospects of being implemented in-game with the tech tree are pretty limited, as far as cruisers are concerned anyway, if I had to pick between this and the CANARIAS as a premium ship, I'd rather buy the CANARIAS. A Spanish cruiser line wouldn't be impossible to make from Tier 1 to Tier 10, but that's a discussion for another time. Anyway, let's talk about Spain's only dreadnought, which was aptly named Spain, or ESPAñA. This is the ESPAñA class, a ship that was one of the smallest of the dreadnoughts in the world. Not exactly the most proud record to have for a battleship, but it is something. 3 of these ships are built in total, the other 2 ships being the Alfonso XIII and Jaime I, which would serve with the Republicans in the Civil War. After the original ESPAñA ran aground near Morocco in 1923 and subsequently was lost, the Alfonso was renamed to España, serving with the Nationalist Navy. Both Jaime and España were lost in the war. This ship's armor for a dreadnought wasn't particularly noteworthy. A 203mm belt with 38mm of deck armor. That's obviously not a whole lot. She'd have to rely on her small size and maneuvering to avoid damage. Armament consists of 8 305mm guns mounted in 4 twin-barreled turrets, 1 front, 1 back, and 2 wing turrets centerline. She could bring all of those turrets around for an 8-gun broadside. Her secondaries are quite good though, 10 102mm on each side. Destroyers beware. She'd fit perfectly at Tier 3, comparable to the South Carolina and the Kawauchi in many aspects. Her armor is weak, but in the hands of a skilled captain, I think she could effectively take down lightly armored ships like destroyers and some cruisers at her tier, although her torpedo bulkhead was considerably weak, so if such a thing is modeled in-game, her captain would have to be very careful in doing such things. I imagine a bit of a higher risk, high reward sort of playstyle in this vessel, perhaps a premium. Anyway, let's finish up with a destroyer candidate. This is the CHURRUCA class destroyer. Sorry Spaniards, I can't roll my R's. Based off of the British Scott class, just about all of these ships served with the Republicans in the Spanish Civil War and proved to be quite useful. Quite fast at around 36 knots and pretty well armed. 5 120mm guns in single mounts, and her 6 torpedo tubes were placed in triple mounts. This vessel seems like it could work well as a Tier 3 or Tier 4 destroyer to me. I'm not too sure about characteristics concerning gun handling or the specifics of its torpedoes, but I suppose they'd be fine enough. We already have a plethora of premium destroyers in-game, so I can't see any reason why this particular ship couldn't be added. Some people have made cases for Spanish tech in the form of destroyer lines that could potentially reach Tier 10, and I have no idea about doing such a thing. If I lived in Spain and I had access to the archives where you could find information on these things, perhaps. But I'm not going to be the one to say yes or no to that. That's not my place. There were a couple other destroyers that both the Republicans and Nationalists employed during the war, but they were quite outdated upon their introduction to service, and I don't think they'd have any particular noteworthy place in World of Warships. One of these destroyers, the Bustamante class, was only equipped with 5 57mm guns, and was only capable of reaching a top speed of 28 knots. Yeah. It's no wonder they were primarily used as training ships. But, all in all, Spain certainly had a fair bit of ships that could work in World of Warships, and I like the idea of implementing a conglomerate European nations tree, or something of the like, to provide an avenue for other countries like Spain to have their ships put in-game. As you saw, Spain had a few potent cruiser designs. A cruiser line could probably make it to Tier 10, like I said, but destroyers are pushing it, and battleships are impossible. So maybe that mixed nation tech tree wouldn't be a bad idea. I'm just spitballing here, though. We have plenty of other countries with a comparable amount of ships to Spain, the Dutch, the Swedish, even Brazil. Those are some pretty good ideas for future videos, yeah? Anyway, if you liked this video, be sure to subscribe for more content like this in the future, and give the video a thumbs up, as it really does go a long way. Until then, I'm Gregor. Thanks so much for watching.